Hello everyone. Today I'm going to talk about packaging in Sitecore. There's really two types of packages that you're going to work with in Sitecore. First one I'm not really going to go too much into because it's not really the type of thing I want to cover. When I go over a little bit with this with TDS, I'm going to cover it a little bit further. But if we go to Sitecore, admin, show, or not show config, update installation wizard, there is a way that you can actually install update packages, or there's probably other names for it, but I typically call it an update package. This is where you would have a file that ends in .update that you would install. So you'd go through this process, choose package, you choose one from your local file system, and then you would go through all the steps of installing. Things that are different between this and the one I'm about to talk about is this will actually give you a backup step. So if you ever wanted, if you ran this package and you got to the end and it deleted things that you didn't want, which is also the other difference between the packages, is that you could actually restore or go back or step back to the way that things were set up. So you could say, oh, I didn't want that change. Let's go back, roll back to that previous state that I was in. So that's a really good thing about this update package. The other one doesn't have that ability. It's a little bit more simpler. Like I just said, the other big difference, this allows you to delete things. It allows you to give special commands. You can do update steps. You can run scripts. You can run all types of things that the other one doesn't really have the ability to do. The reason this one exists is really to update Sitecore, not necessarily to not necessarily install things, but it's used a lot with TDS. If you're using TDS, it will create these update packages, and then it will allow you to run these on your environments, and it really allows you to start going in and deleting things and things like that. Whereas the other one, like I said, will not really allow you to do that, which is a really challenging thing. So let's go back to the one I'm going to show today. I've probably shown a little bit of this in the past. So if I go back to Sitecore, I had a video on how to build modules for the marketplace, and this is kind of a topic that goes with that, because when you build modules for the marketplace, you're not going to use the update package. You're going to use the Sitecore packages zip files to do that. You're basically going to download one of those, and that's how you're going to install your software. My only thoughts to that is that it seems a little limited. The packages that you download, like I said, you can't delete things. I mean, obviously, you probably shouldn't be deleting things, but if it should be able to delete things that, like, one issue I see with the packages today is that if you're building modules for the marketplace and you build version 1.0 of your tool, and then you decide I'm going to build a new version of it, 2.0, but I didn't want all those existing items I created, I want new items, you're going to find that you've created a scenario where you're going to have to leave those items in your previous environment, and now you have the new files that you created. There's probably ways around that. You could probably run some sort of script or something that can be triggered at the end to just fire off and update and delete those items. But there's more effort there than there is typically with the update package that will handle it all in one shot. Let's go ahead and just kind of start showcasing this. So if I go up to the desktop, there's other ways to get to this. This is just one way. This is my preferred way. And I always prefer to be on the desktop anyways, because there's a lot of options there. If we go on the start menu and we go to development tools, you'll notice that there is two items here. If we were talking about installing, which I'm actually going to build a package and then I'm going to install it, this just to kind of show the two sides of this packaging video. If you're installing, you didn't use the install wizard, which all it does is takes those packages that you are going to define, either you're defining or you're getting from the Sitecore modules or the Sitecore marketplace, or even from friends and things like that. So something to keep in mind there. But let's go over the package designer. So I just want to show some of the steps to creating a package. First off, you're going to give it a package name. So I'm just going to call this example. The author, I typically, if you're going to do any work with a company or anything like that, I usually like to use a company name. But You can also use your author name. If you're well known, it might be kind of good because your name is actually kind of a brand as well. And then you can just create a version number for this. So if you're building a marketplace module, ideally increment this and make it match the release versions in your source control. So if you're building the next version of your software, you'd call this version 1. Or 2.0 or 3.0 or whatever. If it's a minor release, then it's 1.1. If it's obviously some sort of bug fix, then you might call it 1.0.1. I'm not going to go too much into versioning numbering. This would be up to whatever versioning that you want. Publisher, this doesn't really matter. The license doesn't really matter. These are really unnecessary. If you wanted to provide license information, you could do that. You could go out and look up the GNU license and copy its text and paste it in here, and you'd be set to go. Or depending on whatever licensing information you want to do, or you have a lawyer create this as well. So that's pretty much it for configuring the settings for the overall package. Now there's steps to things that you can add to the package. It's all about adding sources to your package, but it's limited to some degree. So let's talk about some of those things. First off, we can add security accounts to this package. Let me click this option. You could add roles, I believe, to this. You could add roles and you could add users. If you wanted to, let's say you're working locally and you want to get packages up to production, but you want to add a new role, you could just click, and I want to add this new role called author, and now you can say next, and you would add this role to your package. One other thing to say, I keep talking about Sitecore modules. It's important and useful to use this feature for deploying content around. So typically, if you're using TDS or using Unicorn, you would not want to have content items in your source control. So how do you get content and transfer it around? There's different ways. This is one of the more preferred ways, but there are other ways as well to do that. So and typically, when we're doing deployments, there's usually some collection of these packages that need to be installed. Maybe it's just, hey, we didn't anticipate a change that was needed on QA, and now we're going to package it up and we're going to deploy that out to production. Or the client has made changes to QA, but they want those moved up to production for this change that we're making. We can package them up and place them up on production. You need to be very careful with that as well. Like I said, you can't delete things, so there's or rename things really. So there's some limitations there. So it's really just, I made some changes, either direct changes to an item, or I created a new item. If you made changes, it's going to overwrite those changes, or you can actually merge, but you got to be very careful about that because that could be a scary scenario, because it doesn't really give you a comparison. Like if you were syncing TDS, it would give you a comparison of these fields change versus these fields. So you're going to just have to trust the machine to do the merging and things like that. Just something to be aware of. So I'm going to go ahead and click next. And then for every step I'm going to do, there's a source name that I need to specify. Example role. So now I have a source that represents security accounts that's been defined. Next, there is two other pieces. There's items and then there's files. So you actually can pull in files as well. So this doesn't just relate to Sitecore, it relates to files as well. This is where you could theoretically have it run some scripts and things like that. You could run some additional commands to have it run files. But there's two ways to add files or to add items. You could have it add a specific item. I want this DLL in my package, and this is how, if you were having a marketplace module, you would probably want to have it pull in your DLLs related to your module. And then there's a static way, which allows you options to customize and do that. Let me click on items dynamically. So this is going to pull in items dynamically based on different things. So you can select the master, core, web, production if you have more than one publishing target, like I do in this setup, because this is my example project from other videos. So if I wanted to, I could say core, and then I could say I want all the root items of application, which is ideally not something you would do, but for this example, that's what I'm going to do. Applications. Then you can say all or part of the item name contains this value, things like that. Within the past days, 5 days, any changes or creations of that, any things that has been added in this folder in the last 5 days would get included in this package. Modification you could do as well, publish date, take workflow into account. You can do template filtering. So you can say all these things in the content tree that have this template, which would be pretty powerful if you didn't want to just go and manually statically add item. Created by filter, and you can do updated filter, and you can even do language filtering on these items. So it's a way that you can dynamically build your list of items to add into your package. This is probably more useful from a standpoint of I need to take some items from my QA environment and I need to get them up to production. I need to say I want to deploy all my items that are blog articles. I want to deploy all these blog articles. I don't know how many there are. I don't want to go manually select them. Let's say there's thousands of them. I don't want to go in and just go and find them all and manually select them all. I just want to specify a rule that will go and get them all. So this is really where this would come in. I can go next and I would give a source name. I'm going to cancel because I don't really want to do this. I can just say yes. So the other option is items statically. This probably more relates to if you are a module builder for the marketplace, you probably know exactly what files you want to add. And this is where you would start doing that. So for example, let's go into system. See if I have any good examples. So let's say I wanted to pull in this alias. So I could select this alias. I could say add with sub items, so all the items underneath it would add, or I could just say add the item. And you can actually select lots of different ones here. So, but you don't get a lot of options to change things here. So that's something to keep in mind as well. So buckets, let's go and pick this guy too, add item, and then I'm just going to say next. And now I'm going to give it a source name. So I'm going to call this example items. And there you go. And lastly is the files dynamically and the files statically. Again, I think this relates to, a file dynamically could relate to a module that you're building because you could say I want to pull all bin files. I probably wouldn't want to do that necessarily, but there again, you can then start to say, I want to say only these bin files that are modified since then, or all the bin files that contain Sitecore in them. So that would be a very useful feature because that would basically pull all your Sitecore DLLs. There's probably some use cases there that you might want to move your Sitecore DLLs around. Maybe you want to make this part of your update package. When you're updating Sitecore, you could have it pull all the Sitecore DLLs from one version to another. Obviously, you'd probably want to use the update package in this instance, but there's some strange scenarios. This package creator is great for that. If you're in a weird scenario and you just don't know what other options you could have, you might find that building a package will actually allow you to solve that issue. So I won't go ahead and add this, but the next step obviously would be your source name. You can also add files statically. So this is where you just pick specific files. If you're building a module, this also makes sense. So if I were to go into bin, and let's click on bin, I think I have a one I built in here. I don't see it, but so I built actually no, it's under F. I don't see it. Either way, I'm not going to go ahead and use this, but if you wanted to, you can say add this item, add path, and now you can include these DLLs into your package. When I was building the True Dynamic Placeholders module, this is kind of the steps I would go through. Basically, the way it would work is I would have a solution that would contain all my code. I would deploy out to a Sitecore instance that I would do testing on. And then once I was sure that my module was working the way it was intended, then I would go into a package designer and build a package. I'd deploy this up to the marketplace. There's probably some automated ways to do this, so you can actually create package designer or packages on the fly with code, which I hope to someday talk about, where I could have automatically, hey, it's ready to go. Just click a button, it automatically packages it up into a Sitecore package that I could deploy out to the marketplace. I'm sure somebody in the community already has something like that. I'm not going to go through the steps of this. I'm just going to show now you have the source name. So once you pick you can pick more than one option in that previous dialog. So once you have that, you create the source name and then you're good to go. But I'm not going to add any packages or any files to this. So now we're pretty much near the end of this. So what we might want to do is save. So what you're doing is actually creating you're not at this point saving the package so that you can install it. This actually is just the definition of your package. And you can see I think I've created one in the past. I might have even shown it. So I'll call it example package and I will save. And now I have this definition that I can open up at any time and make changes to. So here again, if you're working with a module and you want to make changes to it in the future, you'd save it, and then when you come back to make changes to it in the future, you just open it using the open option, and then you'd select the option that you want. It would open it, and then you'd start making the new changes to it. Or if you, for some reason, lose that, you could always create a new one if you know exactly what goes into your module. But there's also this generate zip option. So if you click on generate zip, basically what this is going to do is going to take your package name and mix it with the version, and then you're basically going to end up with example-1.0.0. Something the name or I mentioned, it's probably a good practice not to change this name. A lot of things kind of depend on this versioning numbering, so it's useful to just leave it as is. Just make sure when you're defining your package that you update it correctly for what you're trying to create. So I'll go next. It's generated. I'll save it. So now I can access this. Let's see, show in folder. So it's in my downloads folder. Okay, so close, and that's it for now. Let's go ahead. I can do a launch wizard where I install it, but I'm actually going to back out, and then I'll show the steps to install that package I created. So I click this. I'm going to need to upload it into my local folder so that I can run it. So the first thing is to click upload package. Once that opens up, then I can choose file. This is where I would go to downloads, and I would look for that file, which should be under E. Probably went down too far. So I'll just select the example 1.0.0, click open, click next. I'll just say override existing files. That way, if there is existing files, it will just go ahead and do it without complaining. Have the option to install. If you already had it selected, you could just do choose package, and then you could select the one that you wanted to do from your list. But you now have the access to it. This actually uploads it to your data folder. At some point I'll show or maybe provide a blog on that, but you can find that out across the web as well. So I selected example 1.0.0. Next, it will show me my package name, my version, and here's where the author comes in. Publisher is also useful. So if the author is me and then I put my company name here, that would also be useful. Like I said, I usually just if I'm working for my consultancy, which is Arrow Digital, then I will usually put Arrow Digital here when I'm deploying out to clients instead of my name. But if I'm building modules for the marketplace or things like that, Dylan Young is what I would use. So I'll now install. So what's going to happen is I selected some items that I already definitely had in my environment. So it's going to clash. It's going to say, okay, this ID already exists in your core, or actually in my master. So now it's going to ask me, what do I want to do in those scenarios? You can actually customize these as well and force it to do certain things, but it's probably better to let it ask you. So I can say overwrite if I was sure, and this will overwrite. It's important to note it will overwrite the item and everything underneath it. Probably not a good option. There is a merge option. Leave the subtree and replace any matching items and versions with those from the package, but do not replace any sub items. So basically, it's a kind of a unclear name for it because really it's just overwrite. But the overwrite overwrites it and its subtree, but the merge overwrites the item but does not overwrite its subtree, at least with the clear option. If you select append, it'll leave the subtree, overwrite nothing, and append any matching item versions to the existing subtree by giving them incremental numbers. This obviously wouldn't be ideal either. And then there's the merge, leave the subtree and replace any matching items and versions with those. So that'd probably be the best one. To do. And then you could do skip. You could say, hey, I don't want to install this option. Lastly, there's a few things on here. You can say abort. That will stop the package install. You could say apply to all, which would just take this setting and just go to everything and just apply it. Or you do apply. So I'll just do apply. It's going to ask me again because I had another item that had the same issue. I'll do apply again, and then it should pretty much finish up here. It's saying that I actually had a role that already existed, and it's saying it's because it already exists. And I could say continue. And then it gives you an option at the end. Do you want to restart the Sitecore server, which would basically, it's kind of essentially like recycling the app pool. And then this would be restart the Sitecore client. Restart the Sitecore client is probably the best option here because you're not really restarting anything needed. One thing to note when you're installing packages is to follow the guidelines provided by the package. So some have additional steps. You might need to run some sort of file. This might be to clean up all the items that they want you to delete, things like that. So that's very important to note as well. Anyways, that's the end of this tutorial. Please feel free to reach out to me via other channels, LinkedIn, Twitter. I also added this new lower thirds onto my videos, so there was a link to my blog where that's really the best place to reach out to me and kind of go because it basically contains anything and everything related to me. It's not necessarily blog articles, but it's more, hey, you want training? You can check that out. You can check out upcoming webinars and things like that that are coming out for me in my Sitecore world. All right, that's it. Bye-bye.